Hi everyone, this is Melanie. I'm interrupting today's regularly scheduled programming for this little brief insert. So as I was editing today's video, I realized I forgot to include some things. So first of all, this is the first in a series that I'm hoping to do over the next period of time. I have no idea how long it's going to take. It could be a month, it could be 2 months. It's all about planning, organizing, and trying to be more prolific in creating. And I'm going to call this series Push 2018. And PUSH stands for persist until something happens, at least that's what I'm saying it means. And the idea about it is to push yourself to actually get things done. And push also happens to be my one little word for the year, which is what I will talk about in the next clip that's going to be attached here. So anyways, I also wanted to let you know that on a Creatively Crafted Life Facebook, we have a Facebook group called Push 2018, and if that's something that you're interested in joining us on this little, organization journey, by all means, please request to join and we will include you in our little group. It's tiny, it's not very big, but that's kind of nice because you really get to know the people that are in the group. So primarily crafting focused, but if you have other things that you want to accomplish and you think, a weekly check-in accountability group kind of thing will help, by all means, still feel free to join us. So anyways, now on to today's topic. Hi everyone, welcome back to Creatively Crafted Life. This is Melanie, I'm in the craft room. So just a couple of points before I start talking about plans for the year and how I'm going to approach being more productive. I am single, I don't have any children. All my immediate family, so we're talking parents, siblings, nephews, nieces, aunts, uncles, everybody lives in a different country. So I am here in the US by myself. I have a full-time job that pulls me away from my craft room for about 40 hours a week. I know that's sad, but we do have bills to pay. The work often sends me away on work trips, so probably about 4 or 5 times a year it seems, although I'm hoping it'll drop down to closer to 3 times a year. They do send me away for about a week at a time. So I'm away from home at that point in time. So those are all really my main constraints on my time. I've been a scrapbooker for over 25 years. I was a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator for about 7 years. And to be honest, my craft room reflects that. I have a lot of stuff, people. A lot. I'm not going to lie. I do some purging throughout the years, but I do keep a lot of stuff. For instance, all my stamps I've purchased, all my dies I've purchased. I don't really get rid of them. So I have a lot. And I just want you to know that that's the background that I come from. So when I start sharing stuff, you understand the context of things. I also see the potential in most things. I'm not tied into one particular color scheme. I, see bits of pieces of paper and I think I can make something out of it. I see paper clips and my brain shoots off 20 different ideas. Now, do I get around to them? That's not always the case, which is why we're having this discussion about things that I want to do to help me produce more or put into practice more of my ideas. So anyways, that's just about me, and the main reason why I wanted to tell you is so that you can recognize, well, that that's not you. So my particular circumstances are different than yours, and what works for me may not work for you. And the amount of time I can allocate to the stuff, especially when it comes to creating, is not likely going to be what you can allocate. And that's just the reality of our situations, right? So even the amount of stuff that I have and what I will share over this, the course of this year, that's just a reflection of my situation, right? I'm not trying to say, look how much stuff I have, or you should be like me, or anything like that. That's not my intention. Really, if anything, it's going to show you that I have a little bit of a hoarding tendency. I keep everything, and I'm working on that. But really, my point behind sharing this with you is to share some of the strategies that I've implemented or that I have tried and perhaps haven't worked, and hopefully to encourage you to think about your life and how you do things, and if there's something that I do that sparks an idea or resonates with you in any sort of way, that you may try it. So now that all of that huge disclaimers out of the way, let's talk about 2018. I know we're already halfway through January, which is crazy. I feel like I'm still stuck in 2017. I haven't done a lot of crafting yet this year, and some of that is because of certain barriers that are in place. And that's one of the things that I want to talk about through this session, is what barriers exist and how can we work around them or through them or remove them altogether. So usually with the new year, we have this idea of a clean start, you know, a fresh start, and we're all gung-ho, and that lasts about 2 weeks, and then life happens, and the next thing you know, it's 2019. And so what I want to try to do is focus this year on how can we make this the best year, right? How can I maximize my time or use my time efficiently to do all the things that I want to do and accomplish. So I don't know if you've ever heard of this. If you've been in the crafting, especially the scrapbooking community for any length of time, you've probably heard of Ali Edwards and her One Little Word project. And the basic premise of this is you pick a word that kind of inspires you and drives you forward throughout the year to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. So last year I used the word do, and I got a lot done. To be honest, I was quite surprised at how impactful that word was in encouraging me to do things. I mean, I finished a quilt that I started, I think it was almost 20 years ago. I finally finished it, and it really was because of this word and my reflection on it and putting things into practice. So I want to build on that this year. I want to continue to do, but I also want to push myself to do more. Can I fine-tune things? Can I find ways to use my time more efficiently, more effectively? Right? I want to push myself further. I want to push myself in areas that I've been a little scared or a little hesitant to try. So in order to do this, I kind of need to know where I'm at and where I want to go, right? I'm not a huge, what's the right word? I'm not an expert in goal setting or any of that kind of stuff. And I don't really think of this so much as goals as more of an inventory. So it's an inventory of projects, ideas, of classes, of things I want to try, right? And I want to have this list so that when I am presented the opportunity to be able to get into, say, my craft room, that I can draw from that and assess where I want to go, what I want to do, and what I want to accomplish. So I have a list of things that I started. Now, I actually did this in my homemade traveler's notebook, but you could do this on the spreadsheet, you know, if that's more your thing, or you can jot it on in a notebook, whatever works for you. But this is what I've done. So I have some of these notebooks that I'm using. One I've called projects, the other one I've called a master project list. And really this should probably be before the other one, but that's another story. So master project list as well as potential projects. I have my scrapbook projects separate from my regular ones, although really these are scrapbook projects too. And then this is product wish lists and used. So let's start with that. So one of my functions or goals is, like I said, I have a lot of product, a lot of tools, and some of the things I've actually never used. I know, I'm ashamed to admit it. And so I would like to focus on using things that I have never used, because there's a reason why I have them. And usually there's an idea or a thought or a project or something that was instilled. And so I do want to try and use that. So the first part of this book, and we'll zoom you in a little bit here, maybe. The content's not so important because, of course, this is just relevant to me, but just so you get the idea, is I just have different manufacturers, and I've listed different products that I've seen as they've been released, and I check them off if I happen to purchase them. Sometimes my my thoughts change, and when I go and place an order with one of these companies, they no longer appeal, or something's changed, in which case then I just cross them out. Okay, so it's just a way of things, you know, that I'm interested in. Then I have my 2017 product list. This is not exhaustive, right? I've got other lists elsewhere that need to be added. And this was something I started last year, was using products for the first time. And my goal was to use 50. And at the point that I have finished transferring everything into here, I was at 96. I'm probably at about 150. So I'm very happy with that. And I think I will do that again this year, just because it is interesting to see all the things that I've managed to use that I never used before. Okay, that's just for my own interest. Okay, so that's what that book is about. My master project list are potential projects. I have an index. I've categorized it into things that I'm interested in, like scrapbooking, sewing / quilting. I don't do a lot of either, so that's why I grouped them together. Embroidery, again, I don't do a lot of this, but every now and then I get the urge to do something a little bit different, and that fills that need. I also do a lot of card making. I've experimented with painting. This particular organizational finance is actually nothing to do with crafting, but this is more on the personal side of things. But I did include that in here because, again, this is my life and that fits in. I had a One Little Word 2017 project. I need to add the next year's in here because this one will be wrapped up shortly. Last year I participated in the 365-day photo challenge. So I've got some stuff on that, and then learning. So this is any online classes and stuff that I have. Now, I'm notorious for signing up for classes and watching the content, but not actually doing. So one of my goals is to actually do the exercises. So that's what that looks like. I referenced the page where it starts, and then I just listed, right? So scrapbooking, I've got all the different scrapbooking projects. So these are not necessarily pages, these are projects. So for instance, I want to do a Disney 2010 album. I have a Las Vegas 2011 project. I've got, you know, my 2010 chronological, 2011 chronological, etc. Right? So I've got quite a large list. I came down to the bottom, and you can see up here that I've moved that to page 17. So if you were to flip to page 17, the list continues, and I have more that I need to add on here, right? So last time I updated this was probably about September of last year, and so there's other projects that I have in my brain that I need to dump on here. And then I've got my sewing projects, and as I finish them I just check them off and mark them completed, right? So embroidery, here's my card making, painting. I don't actually have any specific projects, but there's things that I want to develop and grow in that area, so we will need to flesh that out. All my other stuff, etc. Okay, so that is my master project list. Now, under just the project book, what I have here, well, the first part of the book was for a different project that I was working on that kind of got put on hold. Okay, I have a project that I want to do, a scrapbooking project that I want to do about me. Not so much about what I do, but more about who I am as a person, my characteristics, values, etc. So these are just thoughts, right? This isn't actually all the things that I want. It's just more ideas about it. I have a bunch of memories that I've written down of things that I want to tell the story of. I don't necessarily have photos, and so when I come to start doing this project, I'm going to have to figure out how I want to do that. I want to start an album just about my nieces and nephews, and I've listed a few pages there of things that I want to include. And then I've got my 2017 year where I've listed the pages that I want to accomplish outside of the project life part, okay? So that's what I started there, and then I started in this book, the similar idea, but this is strictly scrapbook pages. And I went all the way back to 2007 because I've done my chronological album up to 2006. So I've gone through all my paraphernalia, all my photos, and I've outlined all the stories that I want to tell as of this point in time. And I've
basically written them out, okay? So up to 2013, I finished 14 and 15 and 16, I believe. I believe those are all done. I'm partway through 17, okay? And then I also have some mini albums or separate albums that I want to do for specific trips. So this one here I just started. I haven't actually fleshed it all out, so we will include that as well. So hopefully you get the idea, but basically I've got a master list. You do not have to make it as complicated as this, seriously. You could just take one notebook and just start writing, right? Everything that you want to accomplish. The reason why I do it this way is because sometimes some of these projects are large. So for instance, to say 2012, which is my chronological year album, I mean, that's going to be probably about 40 or 50 spreads all said and done. And I don't get to check anything off, right? Until it's completely done. But if I break it down into smaller components, then I feel like I've accomplished something. Plus, it also allows me to work out of chronological order within the album. So as I'm inspired by products or by whatever story interests me at the moment, I can work on those, not necessarily in the order that I want them to go in the album. Okay, so there's a few reasons why I like to track this, and one of them is that it gives me a sense of control, right? I know what I need to accomplish. I've got it written down. It's very easy to reference. I have a place to capture my ideas. So whenever I think of something like those old memories from when I was a child that I don't have any photos for, I can write them down. I may not be ready to scrapbook them yet, but they're there and I won't forget, which is another reason, right? How often aren't we concerned about forgetting things, and so our mind gets cluttered with always trying to remember. So by writing it down, I can free it up for other things. And I'm never at a loss for something to do, right? When I feel like crafting, I come in the room, and if I don't know what I want to work on, I can always reference this book. So another thing that you may want to consider, again, this is my tool, but if you're going to do, let's say, an Excel spreadsheet or something, you could easily make it into a table and you could capture other information. So if time constraints are more of an issue for you, you may want to indicate, for instance, how long you think each project will last or require, how much time will require. And if you're someone who can only manage 15 minutes a day, then maybe the way that you can capture your inventory of projects is to break it down into 15-minute sections, so that when you have 15 minutes, you can work on this component of whatever it is that the project is until it's finished. The other thing you may want to note is what projects have you already started versus projects that are brand new. Sometimes we get bored with existing projects and we like to start something new, but then we've got a lot of unfinished projects, and we really need to make sure we build those into our rotation so that they finally get done. Unlike my quilt that took me 20 years to do and I kept putting it off. Speaking of that quilt, the reason why I kept putting it off was because there was an issue with it. Basically, I had spilled something on the backing and it had stained it and it was bothering me, and I had to pull it apart and put a new backing on. Doesn't sound that complicated, but in my brain I made it into something much bigger, and it became a barrier to me completing that. So as you go through the list, if you have any projects that have barriers or things that are preventing you from starting or completing, you may want to make note of those. Another example would be, let's say your daughter got married last summer and you are waiting for photos to come back from the photographer, right? That would be a barrier. You can't start the project until you have those photos. So by identifying that that's a barrier, that is something that you can make a concerted effort to work on to remove the barrier. In other words, you can follow up with your daughter or the photographer, or whatever your relationship is, and get those photos in your hand so that you can actually start working on them. The other thing that you may want to keep in mind when you're writing this is there a deadline? So for instance, if we go back to my card listing, I actually put the dates, right, of the month when these needed to be completed, so that I knew how many cards I had to make in each month so that I could meet my deadlines. Now they're self-imposed deadlines, but I do like to send out cards to all my family members, or my immediate family members. And so if you do have a deadline like that, it may be a good idea to make note of it. So basically at this point, a starting point for me is I need to update this list, right? And I am also working on some of the barriers that I have to actually working on projects. And so one of those barriers is organizing my craft room. Now my craft room is fairly organized, but every now and then it just needs some fine tuning and tweaking, right? So that's the process that I'm in at this moment. I just completed a big project in December. That was my December daily, which I posted videos on. Please check our YouTube channel for those if that's something you're interested in. So this is a barrier, right? Until I get this room cleaned and sorted to a level that I feel I can function in, that needs to be addressed. So over the next few weeks, I'm hoping to share various elements of my craft room as I work through them, and we could talk about some things that have worked, some things that don't work, and hopefully inspire you to become a more productive scrapbooker slash crafter slash person in general. Anyways, that's all I have to say today. Thanks so much for joining me, and until next time, happy crafting.